Everyone in the family knew about Lola Amara's necklace. It was a thin silver chain with a small, oval locket. Old, scratched, but it was never, ever removed. Not when she slept. Not even during the 2 surgeries she had. Her granddaughter, Lika, once asked her, "Lola, why don't you ever take it off, even just to clean it?" Her grandmother simply smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "Because it holds a piece of my heart," she'd said. After that, no one questioned it again. It was just a part of her. Years flew by. The family tree branched out. Kids grew up and had kids of their own. But the necklace stayed right where it always had around Lola's fragile neck, resting close to her heartbeat. Then, one quiet September morning, Lola passed away peacefully in her sleep. The house, usually so full of laughter, filled with mourners. Photos were brought out from dusty albums, candles were lit, and stories of her long life were shared. But amid the grief, one question resurfaced. What about the necklace? The family hesitated. It felt like a betrayal to remove something she held so dearly, something she'd guarded her entire life. But for the funeral preparations, they knew they had to. Lika, who was always closest to her grandmother, was chosen for the task. Her hands trembled as she reached for the clasp. She whispered, "Lola, please forgive me." She gently unfastened the chain and held the locket in her palm. Everyone assumed it would hold a picture of her late husband, their Lolo, or maybe a tiny, folded love letter. Lika's fingers fumbled with the delicate catch before it finally clicked open. She looked inside, and she froze. It wasn't her grandfather. Inside was a tiny, faded photograph of a baby, swaddled tightly in a white blanket. Lika carefully took it out. On the back, written in faint ink, was a date. A date that meant nothing to anyone in the room. Lika showed it to her mother, who frowned in confusion. This isn't any of us," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The question rippled through the family. Who was this baby? And why did Lola Amara, a woman they thought they knew so well, keep this picture hidden from the world, yet so close to her heart? That night, unable to sleep, Lika began sorting through her grandmother's old belongings. At the very bottom of a dusty closet, tucked away beneath stacks of old linens, she found a small wooden box. She lifted the lid. Inside was a bundle of letters, their pages yellowed and brittle with age, tied together with a faded red ribbon. Her heart began to race as she untied it and opened the first one. The handwriting was her grandmother's. "My dearest Amara," the letter began, though it seemed she was writing to herself. "I'm sorry for what we were forced to do." Forced? Lika's breath caught in her throat. She read faster, her eyes flying across the page. "I know it breaks you to give the baby up. I know it feels like a piece of you is gone forever. But we had no choice. In our circumstances, they would never accept a child born this way." Lika covered her mouth, a gasp escaping. The letters told a story that had been buried for over 60 years. Before she married their grandfather, before she built the family they all knew, Lola Amara had a child. A child she was forced to give up for adoption. A child no one in the family ever knew existed. And the photograph in the locket? That was her. That was the baby. With trembling hands, Lika gathered the letters, the photo, and the necklace. She found her mother sitting silently in the living room. When her mother finished reading the last letter, she let out a sob that seemed to carry decades of her own mother's hidden pain. "All these years," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "All these years my mother carried this burden completely alone." They shared the discovery with the rest of the family. The reactions were a mix of shock, sadness, and silence. But in their grief, a new purpose emerged. They all knew what they had to do. They had to find the child. Or at least find out what had become of her. The search began. It felt like searching for a ghost. Weeks turned into a month. They made endless phone calls to distant, half-remembered relatives. They spent days digging through brittle public records, old hospital archives, and adoption agencies. Dead end after dead end. It seemed the secret might stay buried forever. Then, finally, a breakthrough. A clerk at a provincial records office, moved by their story, found a match. A record of a child adopted in a nearby province, with a date and birth details that perfectly matched the letters. The record had a name, Elena Santos, a woman now in her late 60s. And she was living only 3 hours away. The family decided to visit. Lika, her mother, and 2 of her aunts made the journey. Their hearts hammered against their ribs as they stood before a small, neat house and knocked on the door. A woman with a gentle face, warm eyes, and salt and pepper hair opened it. "Can I help you?" she asked kindly. Lika found her voice, though it was shaky. "Ma'am, we think you might be related to us." Carefully, respectfully, they explained everything Lola Amara, the necklace, the letters, the lifelong secret. Elena listened without a word, her expression unreadable. Then she turned and disappeared back into her house. She returned a moment later, holding an old, worn box of her own. She opened it. Inside, nestled on a piece of velvet, was the exact same photograph of her as a baby, the same blanket, the same faint handwriting on the back. Her eyes glistened with tears she'd held back her entire life. "I always wondered," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I always wondered who my real mother was, and why she gave me up." Lika reached out and took her hand. "She didn't want to," she said softly. "She loved you so much. She loved you enough to keep you close to her heart every single day. Even when she couldn't keep you in her arms." Elena took the locket, her tears falling onto the cool silver. Can I keep this?" she asked, looking up at them. Lika nodded, smiling through her own tears. "She wore it every day because it was her only connection to you," she said. "Now it's your turn." Elena carefully pulled the necklace over her head. She clutched the locket tightly against her chest, right where her mother had worn it for a lifetime. And in that quiet, profound moment, the missing piece of Lola Amara's heart finally came home.